Hello and welcome to the 2025 San Francisco Green Film Festival. Another Q&A for our shorts program. I think this is program number 2. We are lucky to have some of the filmmakers here with us from different parts of the country. Hey, filmmakers.
Hey. Hello.
Howdy.
Allison, I'll start with you. Where are you calling in from?
I'm on Cape Cod, Massachusetts.
And
So
what
I'm
is
on
your...
the elbow. I'm
Oh,
right in the crook
you're
of
right
the
on the elbow.
elbow.
Okay. And what is your film and what is your role?
It's the film is called Frozen Frames, Murphy's Yellowstone, and my role was producer, director, co-editor. But in fact, this is it's a strange origin story for this film. It was originally intended to be a different film shot by somebody who finally said, I just don't know how to make this work. And so I was asked to step in. And so it was interesting, inheriting footage. And then in many ways, I had to start over, and we reshot many
Wow.
things and came up with this beautiful little love letter to a wonderful conservationist photographer who is devoting his life to saving Yellowstone and the creatures who live there. So
Yeah.
it's been a circuitous route, but really a wonderful experience, the
It
process.
was, yeah. I
Yeah.
remember your film and all these films for that matter. I just remember also writing in my notes, can't wait to see it on the big screen.
Yes.
Beautiful.
I
Uh,
have yet to see it on the big screen myself, so I
well,
wish I could be there, but
come to San Francisco.
I wish I could.
Stuart, how about you next? What is your film and what is your role? And since Allison started with the first kind of segue, what inspired and started the film?
Well, thanks, Jason. I'm the producer on Ranger of the North, which is a fairly long short at 30 minutes. Um, and that began out of actually a Tolkien-oriented relationship that I have with a friend of mine. We've been part of one of these Tolkien Society Smiles for several years. And unbeknownst to me, he is also a director, a film director, documentary director. And somewhere along the way, I cottoned on to the fact that he was working on this film, which traces the journey of a retiring national parks ranger in Alaska, a gentleman called Peter Christian, who has ranged and patrolled the northern Arctic parks for decades now. And as he's approaching retirement, he has been sort of conflicted by the reality of climate change impacts up at those latitudes. And he's also a lifelong Tolkien fan and scholar. And so he wanted to basically return to the north. He now lives in Anchorage, and basically face the shadow of climate change at the source, the Prudhoe Bay oil fields on the Arctic coast, with Lord of the Rings in hand, and to process that experience and return home and to the next chapter of his life with hope intact.
Yeah.
And the idea for the film basically came out of this idea that good literature can really empower our lives in useful and practical ways, like feeling hope when there's a lot of reasons to feel despairing. And so that was Bradley, our director's sort of light bulb moment for this film, was this desire to show what this work could bring to somebody's life and to our lives in the process. I'm actually a recovering climate scientist myself.
Really?
And so that was one of the ways that I wound up contributing to the film as an expert in the field and nature connection role as well.
Before I get to Rachel with the same question, what do you mean by recovering climate activist?
Well, after you spend about 10 years doing the science and trying to communicate these messages to the world, and um, the world just sort of barrels on and worse, says that it's all um, rubbish, the
Hmm.
world. Loud voices in the world. Of course, most of us,
Hmm.
by number, actually see the light. And so my career went off in other directions. And one of those directions turns out is perhaps working on that message in different ways.
Yeah.
So not trying to necessarily do the science so much, but trying to communicate in other ways. And we know that Tolkien is very popular to all sorts of audiences. And so we're hoping to get this environmentally oriented message in front of people who might not otherwise buy a ticket to a green film.
Right, right. Well, I'm glad you made it. Wonderful.
Thank
Rachel,
you.
good to have you here.
Hello,
Tell us
thank you
about
for having
yourself and how
me.
this film started.
Yeah, so this film basically started during my
Well,
last
first off,
quarter
tell
of
us what your film is
undergrad.
again, just to refresh our
Yes,
memory.
my yeah, my film is Valley of Growth, and I was the director on it. But basically the film started my last quarter of undergrad. I graduated from UC Santa Barbara in 2024. And then my last quarter there, I was in a class called Green Screen, and it's essentially a class about like pretty much the whole goal of it is to make four different environmental films, whether it's narrative, documentary, animation. You could basically do whatever you want to do with it. And basically I went into it starting with the pitch, like before I graduated undergrad, I wanted to make a woman's climbing documentary. It was kind of a broad like idea, but I basically wanted to highlight all the work and everything that like different women do in the community, whether it's sort of like them as good climbers, but it really fell into like the environmental work they do and how they want to evolve the community. So it kind
Mhm.
of started with a broad idea, and then it just evolved as far as finding the different like women that were involved. Kate Rutherford, who was one of the main women involved, is a Patagonia climber, and she runs a great organization called Farm to Crag. Our professor for the class, Chris Jenkins, introduced us to her because he knew her through his brother who does like climbing documentaries. And then it kind of just spiraled from there. We went to some Farm to Crag events, and the whole organization is about like connecting climbers in the climbing community to regenerative farming and things like that. So climbers who are traveling can have access to like climate friendly food as they're on the road. And from there we met Kiyomi James, who goes to UC Berkeley and is working to change the climbing community in the Bay Area in her own way. And it was just a really interesting kind of collaboration of meeting these different women who are in different scales of their careers and parts of their lives who are just creating a beautiful impact on the climbing community itself.
And one of these things I just realized maybe why they're partly collected together in this program is they all kind of have a backdrop of national parks or a magnificent setting in our continent. So let's talk about that a little bit. What was it like? Maybe challenges, just the experience of filming where you did. Allison, I'll ask you that. How
Oh
was
my,
filming in
yeah,
Yellowstone, right?
yes. I actually, as I said, I did pickups. The original film was six people, consisted of six people skiing across Yellowstone in the winter, and which is just incredibly difficult. And that's one reason why it was difficult to make a film out of just that material, because they could barely survive, much less film and get good shots and coverage. And so we used just a piece of that. But for me, so I didn't spend a tremendous amount of time in Yellowstone, but I was there in the dead of winter because this takes place in winter, and it's an appreciation of the life there in the winter. It looks like a white canvas, but there is so much life under the snow, above the snow. So we actually stayed in a yurt camp in the dead of winter, which unlike Rachel, I'm not a big hiker or climber, so this was a stretch for me. But it was great. You come out of your yurt, which is basically a tent, and there's snow drifts up to here.
Wow.
So it was fantastic, and it's not crowded at that time. So it was like the bison were ours. We could just sit with them and film them for hours on end. And I fell in love with them. They are the most mellow. I mean, if you don't harass them, of course, which you should not be doing. They're just beautiful, soulful creatures. And so it was a real gift, coyotes and foxes. And
Yeah. I know I
yeah,
can't, like I said, I can't wait to see those on the big screen. Those solo shots of the buffalo with the snow falling on them or in the snow
yeah,
drifts, right? They'll be gorgeous.
they're so beautiful.
Yeah.
Yeah. So.
Stuart, how about you? What was your experience filming in the outdoors in a national park? Or where did yours take place? Refresh my memory.
Yeah, so we filmed mostly on what's called the Dalton Highway, and areas on either side of that, which is the road that goes basically due north from Anchorage. Well, actually, really, it technically starts a little north of Fairbanks and then ends at the Arctic Ocean. And it sort of bifurcates Gates to the Arctic National Wildlife, sorry, Gates to the Arctic National Preserve, and the Arctic National Wildlife Refuge. Um, and so, yeah, we flew up to Anchorage, rendezvoused with Peter Christian, the ranger, and then in two vehicles, we road tripped about 10 days, um, almost probably close to 1,500 miles there and back,
Mm.
and just filming as we went. The further north you got, the longer the days were, the more sort of frantic our constant filming was of every incredible vista that came around the corner. And we were just sort of camping and working our way up and back. And so, I've been to a lot of wild places in the world. For some of the other filmmakers, this was new territory for them. And even if you've been to wild places before, every place is this immersive, saturating experience that just kind of
Yeah.
overwhelms the whole shoot. And that's exactly what happened to us. We had this very nature connected,
Yeah.
spiritual experience, discovering the
Yeah.
film as we went. We had,
Yeah.
basic beats to hit.
Wow.
But the weather was kind, the mosquitoes less so. Um, but the vistas and just being out in remote Alaska was really a
Well,
gift.
I'll ask you that. That gives me. I'll ask you what were some of the challenges besides mosquitoes in just a moment. Rachel, you're a student, right? Is this your first film?
It's actually my second film.
Okay.
So I graduated from UC Santa Barbara, so I have my bachelor's. I actually came back to my community college, Diablo Valley College, to get my AA in photography. And then now I'm looking to go to grad school for my master's in documentary film.
Cool.
So kind
Great.
of like in
So
a transition part, but yeah.
yeah. Well, good for you. Keep going. So what was it like
Yeah.
filming in Yosemite? Were you in
hmm
Yosemite? Yeah.
It was, yeah, we were in Yosemite for most of it, and it was really a beautiful experience. For my crew, some of us hadn't been to Yosemite. It was probably, I think, my third time in Yosemite, and overall it was just really exciting because I think the fact that us ourselves were having like such a beautiful, like magical experience there, it kind of like reflected that like experience into it. And overall, like, at the time we were making it, we were students, and with it being on the quarter system, we only had 10 weeks to make a whole
Mm.
short documentary. So it's really fast paced. And we went to Yosemite once for like kind of like a longer weekend, and it was like probably like a 7-hour drive both ways. So it was definitely like a fun travel. There was like six of us in like a minivan just traveling, or like last quarter of college. But yeah, super fast paced, very beautiful to film in Yosemite, and just overall so exciting because during the whole process, and like the two women we like particularly filmed with, like we were like really meeting them and getting to know them for the first time in this beautiful environment. So it's just such a unique
So how did
experience.
you talk about two things? How did you get access to these two women? Like, how did you approach them, and how did they become so open to sharing their stories with you? And then maybe what was a challenge? Was that a challenge, or was the challenge shooting in the outdoors? Describe some of that stuff.
Yeah. Yeah, as far as like we first got in touch with Kate Rutherford through my professor Chris Jenkins, and that was just a really great opportunity he gave us. And then from there, I pitched my idea of what I wanted to do to her, and she was like, "Yeah, I'm so down." And from there, we got to know about her organization, her nonprofit Farm to Crag, as I described earlier. And then we went to the Farm to Crag event that was in Yosemite. And
Mm.
from there, going to Yosemite, we met Kiyomi James, who goes to UC Berkeley. And she was at the event, and we got to know her there, and then had like a short interview with her there. And pretty much we were like, we love what you have to say and everything. Like, can we get more with you? And then we actually planned like another separate trip to Yosemite. It was pretty much just an overnight, which was a big adventure. And she brought her friends out who are part of her community.
Okay.
And just overall, it just kept spiraling of getting to know these women.
Did you have to get any special access to film in Yosemite? Did you have to ask for permission, or did you just follow them?
It
Or
was we pretty much just followed them, and like part of it was outside, part of it was in, and then we were very just like on the ground, kind of had filming on like FX6s. So it was very like very low key, and it was kind of like we were all just hanging out, camping together, enjoying it, and just filming what we were like there for,
right,
which
right,
is kind of like it feels like such a grand place to film, but it felt like very intimate and special.
yeah, small footprint, yeah.
Hmm.
Stuart, how about you too? Any challenges? You kind of described a little bit, the travel and the elements and stuff like that. And then, was the ranger, I forget the character's name, the ranger's name, very forthcoming and open to sharing?
Yeah. So Peter Christian, he's the ranger. Yeah, I mean, he's really the heart and soul of the whole film. So it was very much about his experience. And he is an old hand in these conditions, so he was really our guide in some respects.
Mm-hmm.
Um, but it was a logistically complex shoot because we were basically living out of two vehicles and shooting in whatever conditions they were. The Dalton Highway, I don't know if you've ever seen like ice truckers and those kinds of shows. That's basically that road. It was very wet and muddy. Took the director and I the better part of 8 hours to clean the rental vehicles before we returned them. We were not allowed to take those vehicles on that road. Um, Probably. Um, we, we we never heard back. And so the conditions are, I mean, that road is wild. We probably should have been in full 4x4 vehicles. We were in all-wheel drive vehicles, and they did the job. Um,
Sorry to interrupt. Do those elements, the temperatures, the Arctic and stuff, does that affect your gear, cameras, media, drives?
Yeah, we were shooting in late July, August, so
Oh, okay.
the temperatures are pretty reasonable.
Okay.
The big challenges are bugs, mosquitoes,
Uh,
and then just trying to keep gear safe. And we had a lot of rain on this trip actually,
yeah.
and so
Okay.
there was a lot of wet shooting. Yeah,
And
and just
then
very
what about
dangerous
when you're on
road
the road, like
conditions.
downloading media and
Yeah.
storage of that stuff? Did you just bring enough and you just have to lug it along with you in the vehicles?
We did bring a bunch with us. There was one spot. There's a kind of famous sort of truck stop for all of these big rigs that are driving up to Prudhoe Bay to deliver supplies and materials to the oil fields. And they have this one place in the foothills of what's called the Brooks Range, where they stop over, and then it's a single shot from there all the way through to Prudhoe Bay. So there we had access to some power where we could do downloads and things.
Okay.
But otherwise, we just had to kind of have a bunch of redundancies, and we were in two vehicles in convoy, and so one
Okay.
vehicle really had all the camera gear and the sound gear, and that was sort of the agile shooting vehicle, and the vehicle that I was driving just had all of our camping and food and
I see.
paraphernalia, and that's how we kind of pulled it off.
And Allison, same to you. I know you came in late to the project, but what were some of your challenges to
Well,
complete the film?
yeah, and when you say late to the project, I actually worked on this for 3 years, so it wasn't that late.
Yeah.
Um, and I think one of the biggest challenges was lack of funding.
Uh,
Um,
that seems to
we
always be the case, right?
It was a total labor of love, which I assume these other two projects were. So I think it's important that people realize that we do this because we love it. And so crowdfunding is what allowed us to make this film. And yes, cold temperatures are very tough, tough filming conditions. And so that can, but I was working with two cameramen who are amazing and very accustomed to working in sub-zero temperatures, but all of that has to be factored in. And everybody was lending me gear because I'm not I'm not a sub-zero person normally. So one person brought me, big gloves, and the other person brought me a a hat that would keep me from my brain from freezing. But it was yeah, logistically challenging, and we did have permits every step of the way. Tom Murphy has worked in the park for so long that he is really fastidious about permitting and doing things by the book, because he feels like that's one way that this park is protected is by knowing who's in there and by making sure everybody's playing by the rules and not pushing the boundaries. But it was really a gift to be able to have this experience. But we also had shoots, interview shoots, and the whole crew worked for free just because they love Tom, and we all wanted to support this legacy film that we felt he deserved. So
Right
yeah.
on. Glad you did. Glad they did
Yeah.
contribute. And so we have time for maybe one or two more. What's something you take away from the completion of this? How do you feel about your accomplishment? How has it changed you at all? Is something you learned about yourself after seeing your finished film? How has it changed you? Usually I ask, what do you want an audience member to come away with from your film? But now I'm asking you, the filmmaker, what did you come away with after making
Well, I'll answer since I have to leave early. Um, I it was really reaffirmed that it takes a village, that we had to work together as a team to get to make
it?
this film, to create this baby. And it's incredibly gratifying to work as a team and then have something actually tangible to show for it.
Mm.
And then I just sort of, well, I guess I should submit it to festivals. And it's so validating when a film, especially a film that is a labor of love, when it gets into a festival like this festival, it's really important to the people who've worked so hard on it. So I thank you for that. So that was the main thing. Also knowing that I wouldn't die in the cold. Good to know. I loved it, actually. That's the main thing, is pushing yourself out of your comfort zone is really, really important. And for me, it was also tenacity, that, it took me, it took me 4 years through COVID, through, to find something in this film that would make the film. And I just kept saying, I have to finish this. And so that's good to know that you can pull that out of yourself.
Yeah, well done. We're glad you
Thank
did.
you.
Yeah,
Thank
we're
you.
glad you made it. Stuart, how about you? What's something you took away from this whole process?
Yeah, I mean, I'm a first-time filmmaker. I've been a cinephile for a long time, and I've written about film, but this is my first time being involved in an actual shoot, so that was just a righteous experience from beginning to end. I've loved every iota of it. Um, it was interesting. We didn't shoot in any national parks, so we didn't have any permitting of that sort. But it was interesting shooting in Prudhoe Bay, where you basically have Halliburton and all of these companies, and we just pitch up there at 10 o'clock at night, and we're just wandering around town shooting what felt kind of gonzo, and it was fun.
Right.
But I think the most sort of like rewarding piece of it all was, the whole point of the film is to remind us that hope is like an act of volition. And as someone who has spent a lot of time in the environmental science research world, there's a lot of things that weigh on me. And so to come through this experience, like authentically rejuvenated with my sort of wells of hope refilled by Tolkien, no less, which is another huge piece of the love pie in my life.
Yeah.
So it was just a very gratifying experience to actually set out to do something on film and capture it, and actually ourselves experience that same, I don't want to say transformation, but sort of like a rejuvenation, perhaps. It was wonderful.
Right on. Very cool. Rachel, last but not least, what's a takeaway for you? How has it affected you or impacted you, this film?
Yeah, I mean, I think I just kind of walked away with it with just so much like admiration for the women in the climbing community. I feel like a lot of the time that really was one of my main goals going into it. It's such a male dominated sport and it's very intimidating to come into it. And overall, like I just wanted to go into it and like show other women like how beautiful of a sport it is and how much more it goes beyond just the climbing, but in protecting the environment. And overall is really just like amazing to see like two different women at very different stages in their life pursuing different things of how they want to like just expand as climbers and as activists, and just seeing like how all these women with these different niches like impact making it such a more like inviting and inclusive space where we can positively impact the environment.
Yeah, yeah.
And just like yeah, it just created like brought me a lot of hope and just a lot of inspiration of how I can grow myself as a climber, as an activist, as a filmmaker. It just really overall left me feeling very inspired and very much
Okay,
having so much like admiration for all these women.
right on. Well, we're very grateful and inspired by your films. We thank you for making them, submitting to our film festival, and just seeing your projects through to the finish, so you can share them with us and the world because they're beautiful films.
Thank
Congratulations!
you. Thank you
Thank
very
you.
much.
Yeah, I
Have a
cannot wait.
great
I cannot wait to see them on the big screen. Hey, that's all the time we have. Thanks everybody for watching. Check out more films at sfindy.com, and thank you for supporting environmental films with the San Francisco Green Film Festival. All right, good to meet you guys. Take care.
day. Bye all.
Cheers.